So I started with the foundation. There is a great need for digitization of currency. There is no need for hard currency anymore. And then whether that is the hegemony of the dollar or the hegemony of three different vehicles, we'll see how the market all plays out. I mean, some of the suggestions that you just brought up is more political, and I'm trying to focus on the social need of why we need digital currency. So I'm a very large believer of a stable coin type of currency, not a Bitcoin, a stable coin that is based on a currency, or each country or a country creates a digitization of that.
You could have a basket of currencies, right?
Or you could create, that would be a fantastic deal, like a basket of a world currency. That could work out too. But obviously that represents a lot of issues. What are the role of banking in that? Who plays that role? Who knows who's doing all the transactions? So you have a lot of privacy issues. So I'm not trying to suggest these are easy solutions. But I do believe the backdrop of what is going on with Ukraine and Russia and the role of the U.S. dollar and sanctions, I think it's just going to accelerate the conversation of the utilization of some form of digitization.
If you care, smash the like. This is some good stuff. Let's get into the outline that we have in regards to Stellar. Let's start off with the one and only Larry Fink. He was on Bloomberg not that long ago talking about tokenization of financial assets as a next step. Gone ahead and fast forward to this part. It is less than 2 minutes, give or take. Maybe you've already seen this, maybe you haven't, but listen to this. You're going to want to pay attention. You'll be glad that you did.
We believe the next step going forward will be the tokenization of financial assets. And that means every stock, every bond will have its own, basically, CUSIP. It'll be on one general ledger. Every investor, you and I, will have our own number, our own identification. We could rid ourselves of all issues around illicit activities around bonds and stocks and digital by having a tokenization. But the most importantly thing, we can customize strategies through tokenization that fits every individual. We would have instantaneous settlement. Think about all the costs of settling bonds and stocks. But if you had a tokenization, everything would be immediate because it's just a line item. And so we believe this is a technological transformation for financial assets. I believe if you want to talk about voting and voting choice and all the things, if we know every moment who is the owner of that stock and it's now time to vote, every individual who has ownership is identified and they can vote their own shares.
Is this the end of mutual funds?
I think, well, a lot of people, it's a wrapper. It's not the end of it, but I would say the dominant form of bringing products going forward will be in the form of ETFs.
All right, so obviously that's him talking about ETFs, and that's been talked about more than enough times at this point. I'm going to take you over to this next particular part, and I will give a shout out to the one and only Quant Papa for helping me out with this outline. I know Quant Papa helping out with Stellar XLM. Pretty cool of him to do so. So let's take you over to this, and this is from CoinDesk. I've gone ahead and fast forwarded it. I want you to listen to this as well. This is also good. And it's in regards to this guy who has stated what you see here: crypto waking up to real world assets, securitized CEO. And this was 2 weeks ago. Why is this important? Well, just like you saw from Larry Fink, asset manager giant BlackRock partnered with who? Securitized to launch its tokenized asset fund on, like he says, the Ethereum network. But Securitized founder, CEO Carlos Domingo joins first mover with insights on the partnership and evolution of real-world assets in the crypto space. Why am I pointing this out? If he's mentioning Ethereum, we're going to get into that here in a second. Listen to what is being presented. Here we go.
Outside of this specific news, BlackRock has made a strategic investment in Securitized. Talk to us about what that partnership might look like moving forward. Have you gotten that far in discussions?
First, we're very pleased that BlackRock has not only selected us as their partner for tokenization, but that also have made a strategic investment and and they've taken a board seat in the company. So for us, this is a hugely important relationship. It's the largest asset manager in the world, but it's also, shows their commitment towards the space and our company. Of course, we're expecting this to be the first of many different projects. We're not allowed to talk about the roadmap. We're focusing on what we're doing now. But yes, this is not, as you can imagine, from an investment happening alongside with the project, this is not a one-off relationship.
Are you working with any other institutions that you can tell us about, other than the ones you've already mentioned?
Well, the ones that are not announced, we're not allowed to talk about it. But as you can imagine, we've been talking to many institutions over the last years. And as we have been adding large asset managers to our portfolio of customers, we bring them one step closer to be able to do something. And after the announcement of this project, obviously, we got a massive amount of attention and companies that either were talking to us already or new companies that have reached out to us to see what they can do. So I think that we're going to see the next 12 to 18 months, a significantly increase in the tokenization of real-world assets space.
When we talk about the intersection between crypto and TradFi, regulation always comes up. Have you engaged with regulators on the tokenization of real-world assets? Have there been any challenges there in bringing a product like this with BlackRock to market?
So obviously we are a regulated company, so we are a registered transfer agent with the SEC, and we also have a broker-dealer which is a member of FINRA. So obviously we do talk to regulators all the time for a variety of reasons, because we want to upgrade our licenses, because we want to explain them what we're doing, or because they come with questions when they see projects. What we do are securities, so a lot of the controversy in crypto about which things are securities or not doesn't really apply to us. I think there's still room for improvement in certain areas of regulation for what we do, but for the most part, I think that we have the necessary licenses to be able to operate in a regulated manner with securities, which is what we're doing with BlackRock.
I guess when I ask that, I mean, what kind of questions are regulators asking? Often when we hear about the intersection of products like this, there's a lot of education that needs to happen between the company and the regulators. Is this just something that was understood from the get-go because you're licensed, because you're already dealing with securities?
Well, we started approaching the SEC in particular, which is our regulator, in 2019, before we filed to register as a transfer agent. What I have to say is that the level of understanding they have about the space is, increased exponentially over the years, because obviously 2019 to now is 5 years. So they've been seeing many projects. They've been talking to many firms like us and others. And I think that they've got, a lot more up to speed about what we do. There's still a lot of questions about, what ledger is the right one, like which blockchains can be used or not for this, if they're at the end of the day, solid, financial service infrastructure where you can represent securities in an efficient way. What's going to happen if there's a fork, if there's a 51% attack, like all these things that can happen on blockchain. What happens if somebody loses the private keys of the wallet, etc. So I think that they're asking those questions that are related to this new infrastructure that we're using for doing, if you want, traditional stuff with new infrastructure.
And on that topic, I know that you're regulated by the SEC. The fund is incorporated in the British Virgin Islands. How does that work when it comes to working with an American regulator and having it incorporated over in the BVI?
We sell to US investors, so obviously we're still regulated by the SEC, and we use a SEC registered transfer agent and a FINRA member broker dealer. So we're still regulated under the SEC, even though the fund is not incorporated here.
And Carlos, just to wrap it up, I know we started the interview like this. Look into your crystal ball, take a look into the future. Talk to me about what this unlocks for folks 10, 20 years from now. Where are we headed when it comes to the tokenization of real world assets? And you're right, real world assets, we need another name for that.
So I think that, look, this last week with the new fund coming on chain, we exceeded the 1 billion mark on tokenized treasuries. There is also several hundred millions in credit that we have one of the funds with Hamilton Lane. There is other tokenization efforts in different parts of the space with real estate, etc. I think that the main, in my opinion, breakthrough will be when the overall space becomes 1 trillion. As crypto became a few years ago, that became 1 trillion market cap, the overall crypto space, because at that point in time, this becomes too large and too important for anybody to ignore it, right? So my hope is that we start with 1 billion, then we'll go to 10, then 100, then 1 trillion, and that's when really the space is taking off and become part of the capital markets infrastructure.
Well, Carlos, congratulations on the launch of the new product, and we'll be watching closely to see what you announce next.
Just giving you some examples in regards to this. So that was actually in regards to, I think a couple weeks ago with CoinDesk, right? Here's another example I want to give you guys in regards to tokenization and so on, but this time more focused on Stellar. Check this out. This is something that kind of flew under the radar. Look at this. So this gets brought up quite a bit. Franklin Templeton and so on. As you can see right here, you have this lady. She's from Qualita X. Why Franklin Templeton, ABN, AMRO, and Wisdom Tree are turning to Stellar for, of course, tokenization. How long ago was this? This was at the beginning of the year, for example. But you're going to see this guy who is Roberto Dursky, Senior Director of RWA Tokenization at the Stellar Development Foundation, who discusses high-profile, real-world asset tokenization projects in the financial industry. So they move beyond proof of concept stage to deliver real-world value. Your key takeaway should be, really, we're beyond proof of concept? We are beyond proof of concept. We even talked about this in regards to quant. Notice a common thing going on here, guys, and that is going from all this testing, right, these concepts, but understanding that it had to be built. We have to get to the next stage, which is the utility, as I would say, being put into motion, and then getting to that stage of mass adoption. All this narrative of people from retail saying, well, I don't want to be in that. It's not doing anything. So you're going to come in literally when these things have exploded in market cap. That's when you're going to get in. That's a good way to get wrecked, right? Absolutely. Let's listen to this. Not too long. Listen to this for a second. It's good stuff. Then I'm going to get into some of the other things, like I mentioned in the outline, and that is basically, Stellar for BlackRock Escrow. You got to hear me out on this. Let's go ahead and share this. Good information. Here we go.
And what is the value currently being delivered? Because those are in production. Those are not proof of concepts. That's my understanding. So could you share with our attendees a bit more about the context behind those projects and how they are doing lesson learned maybe at that stage? Because I've been running for a couple of months, I believe.
Yes. I think even a bit more than a couple of months in the case of Franklin Templeton.
Yes.
Yeah, we have multiple, I think, success cases. We need to maybe be clear how we define success. But I think in one end is the project get to a live product, and I think those cases in that term is a success. Are they scaling or actually improving efficiency? I think we're still on the kind of in the midst of that conversation, or even a bit in the beginning of that conversation.
Okay.
To be honest, because the entities that I think took this brave step to be the pioneers exploring this have now to work with their partners and their counterparts and regulators to sort this out, like how this will work, and some of this is being done after the product has been launched, right? But to be more specific here, right, and try to give you things that already succeeded. So if you think about our probably highest profile project, which is not ours, right? It's their project, their project, but it uses Stellar. It's Franklin Templeton and the Benji app. So Benji is the name they gave to the app and to the actual asset, and the asset is a money market fund, and they already have tons of experience managing and distributing those kinds of funds. But then the way that funds, especially from investment banks and asset managers of the nature of Franklin Templeton work, is that they usually sell it to other retail banks to distribute it to their clients, right? And then the transactions between the B2B space is usually bulkier in nature, right? Like you do bigger transactions. They are not real time by definition, and and there's some degree of counterparty risk between those entities and things of that nature. They actually, with that product, went all the way to the end consumer, being able to download the app, do a normal KYC for a financial institution, and once you're live, you can use Fedwire or ACH and just fund your account and buy Benji. The key change there is that because the wallet management or the account management per user is done on the Stellar network, and the asset is issued on the Stellar network, there's no restrictions on how fast or how much of those you're doing, because it's done in real time on the network.
Yeah.
So now you could buy as low as $1 worth of the fund, and you get that instantaneously. The other interesting thing is that the yield is also paid on a daily basis, because for the blockchain, it doesn't really matter if it's a cent or a billion of dollars, and if the yield are being paid daily or monthly, because it's all instant settlement. So it's just another transaction, right? So then this enabled a experience for the end user that is quite different. That they, and again, I'm in Canada, so I don't have that much experience buying and selling securities in the US, but from what I've heard, you were not able to do such a thing, and especially not through Franklin Templeton, in the sense of buying a fund, being able to see it in real time, 24/7, and also actually track your interest on that product, right? And as Franklin Templeton, there are others like Wisdom Tree and a few others that are still not public, that are taking this path of getting very well known and products that exist in many other venues, but actually getting this up a notch in the sense of it's now going to be faster and potentially cheaper, and you can buy smaller amounts, right? So when you think about gold, real estate funds, those are products that I think most people understand what they are, and kind of what are the risks associated with them, but that it's not very accessible, right? Like it's either the minimum ticket is quite high, or your bank just doesn't offer it because it's not like a product you sell to your mass audience. So I think this is where it gets interesting, right? It becomes much easier for you to offer those underlying assets to your end user, because this layer between the physical asset and the let's say the compartmentalization and the distribution becomes much simpler, right? So so Franklin Templeton and Wisdom Tree might be the two most high profile ones in North America.
Those high profile ones in North America. Now, we talked about the whole thing about escrow, okay? Or at least we're about to. I want you guys to understand, when we talk about, for example, supply and demand, we could talk your ear off about cross-border payments and all these things, which, don't get me wrong, are a thing. But this whole notion about, for example, Stellar for BlackRock Escrow, can we give you guys examples about, like, is that actually like a real thing? I mean, I'll be asking that. Well, my thing is, it is, and I'm going to get into that just in a bit. But when we talk about BlackRock, understanding that they are the world's largest asset custodian, even though Larry Fink is not going to come out and admit that, because let's be honest, as soon as you admit that you have all these assets, you're going to get taxed, and they have their own ways of getting around that, right? I mean, if you ever watch or listen to Grant Cardone, I mean, he knows ways around it and so on, right? You don't claim that you own all this stuff. Even Elon Musk does a similar type of thing, right? Not going to go down the rabbit hole of that, but it's a thing. So this whole topic of escrow, as we know, when it comes to escrow, just in case if you don't understand these terms, if you're from like I don't know, overseas or something like that, I don't know the English interpretation. Escrow basically is a bond, it's a deed, or other documents kept, of course, in the custody of a third party, and taking effect only when a specific or specified condition, of course, has been fulfilled. The North American version of it is basically doing what? Placing custody or trust Escrow. When I got into this, I found some old research, and I thought it was very interesting, and I wanted to share it with you guys tonight. This comes from a Medium page. Shout out to this guy who is Michael Molders, if I'm pronouncing that right. So a while back, in the research from the Medium, you will see here some interesting things. It mentions specifically Stellar Escrow smart contract development. Like it talks about first escrow smart contract on the Stellar network. And it goes to mention some things about how the article will explain how, if you are a dev, which most of us aren't, you could develop an escrow smart contract using, of course, Stellar Lumens. What's also worth noting is how it talks about in this article about, smart contracts, but not just any smart contracts, escrow smart contracts, and how it's basically, Stellar at the forefront, part of this prototype. Now, I will state this. Tonight, we don't have the outline in regards to Sorbonne because I don't want to turn this into like a 4-hour show. So when I am back with you guys and talking about some more Stellar, I got an outline in regards to smart contracts because obviously we're talking about Sorbonne, and that is Stellar's premier smart contract platform. But this in particular, in regards to escrow, smart contract escrow, understand the bigger picture. Is Stellar literally like the BlackRock connector for it in regards to escrow? Again, I think the answer is yes, and I want to full screen this to go more into detail about this. So they even give a breakdown, if you're a dev, on how to build this, which is super cool. Especially this part, how they define an owner account who's creating escrow. But basically speaking, it's all coded in and doesn't mention specifically the lumens, XLM. Some of you guys have pointed out, no, it's not going to be that way, Max. It's just going to be strictly USDC. Understanding that when you look more into it, even with the research from a few years ago, it constantly references even XLM. So he talks about this. He says, have you ever wondered why he's selling, for example, or sending 2.5 XLM to escrow? Each account needs a starting balance. In addition, you can add 2 more signers besides the random escrow signer. For each additional signer, you have to add, for example, this amount of Stellar XLM. But he goes on to mention building Stellar escrow transaction. He goes into the whole thing of building that transaction and how it's all coded in with certain operations. And like he mentions in the code, right? Shout out to Cool Cat. You can see here how this is all built, okay? And he's like he says, you have 2 signers to the escrow contract. It goes on to mention the whole thing of, for example, not necessarily giving the escrow account itself an explicit weight, how it's set to 0. But again, if you're a nerd and you want to do this, you can see how it's all written. Being able to sign, for example, and send the transaction on the network. What network? The Stellar network. What contract? A Stellar smart contract, for example, through escrow. So it's all there, and it was all built a long time ago, right? Definitely worth pointing out. Yeah, we did it, right? So my thing is understanding the bigger players who sit at some of these meetings or have put it all together, who they are, where they come from, how this was built. I think there's a lot that's to be mentioned when it comes to a narrative of this is, like some people point out, this is the only thing Stellar is doing. Nonsense. They're doing so much more that people don't realize. Can we give an example in regards to that? Here's an example. Let's go ahead and blow this up. Smash the like. You'd be glad that you listened to this particular segment. I'm telling you, there's more than meets the eye when it comes to specifically Stellar. So Patrick Campos, a security on digital assets and financial markets infrastructure. This is 2 years ago, but what he's going to talk about here is in regards to a lot of specific things, and that is basically virtual asset infrastructure, how to build on those rails, how you can exchange value, for example, securely. How can you be in compliance? how you can interconnect these markets with what? Open infrastructure. I've gone ahead and fast forwarded
in one product.
to this particular area. I want you to listen to this for example, and hear this out, because he's going to give an example about system support, bank value chain process, one product, interest rate swaps, that highlights the system complexity involved. We're going to play a decent portion of this because we want to get to the part about legacy financial services. Think about that for a second. Institutional DeFi, and of course, securities role. But to have this tied into what? Stellar? Literally referenced from Stellar? Think about it, guys. Let's play this. Here we go.
In our world, again, as pointed out by many of the other presenters, this is one smart contract. And so in a very simple way, this is a visual representation of the complexity that can be really overcome through the use of effective blockchain-based technologies. And of course, we're seeing that. We're seeing that from financial institutions. We're seeing it across, all of the major, financial centers. Securrency is a US-based company. We have a large operation in Abu Dhabi. We see these sorts of developments in both places, in Europe and Asia and everywhere around the world. So how do we identify where these solutions are really best placed? Well, if we look at the diagram to the left, that's the world that we live in today. The diagram to the right shows where these problems can be overcome through the use of this new powerful technology. Now, if at the bottom part where we say fintech disruption, there is a lot of work being done here by a number of very, very good companies. But at the top where we say regulatory disruption, there are two ways that you can address this. You can either get all of the regulators to change their regulations and become much more simplified, which is a very difficult challenge when you think about all the different regulatory agencies that are out there, not just in different countries, but even within a country. For example, in the United States, we have many different agencies covering many different activities. But there's another way that this can be addressed, and that is by creating more or less a clearinghouse for market participants, one that recognizes the regulations of all these different jurisdictions and allows transactions to occur in a manner that is compliant with all of those jurisdictions. That's the mission that Securrency set out to address, because without doing that, it's very difficult to really address or really capture the efficiencies of blockchain technology. And this, of course, results in a highly scalable system through simplicity. Now, I'll pause on this slide for a moment, because back in 2015, when Securrency first started building out this infrastructure, we were viewed as somewhat odd in this space. Most of the work that was being done, if it wasn't around ICOs, it was either building your own blockchain or digging deeper into one particular blockchain or building certain components. But we were building really an end-to-end framework for the movement of digital securities and really of all types of digital value. Now we find ourselves in 2021, and we see that the dominant trend is really that regulated institutions are all adopting digital assets, not just Bitcoin, but digital assets of all type. And it's no longer a question of if. For these major institutions, it's a question of when and how. The other trend that we see is in the crypto community, the winners are really embracing. They're truly embracing the fact that they need to become more institutionalized. Well, maybe not embracing, maybe they're not doing it, as willingly as one might hope, but nonetheless, they're beginning to recognize that this must happen, and the value that can be captured when you bring these two worlds together, the tremendous advances from the crypto community in decentralized finance or DeFi, and the large number of assets and the institutional experience that you have on the regulated institutional side. You bring those together and you really have a powerful framework for what we call institutional DeFi. That's precisely what we've been doing for 5 years. The market now very much has come to securrency.
What if there was a way to know if a stock will be bullish or bearish the day before? The truth is,
And so here we are at the right place, at the right time, and with the right technology. And what we see is that again, the crypto players and the digital assets players in this space, who we feel very strongly about, are all recognizing this. So what is it that we built? Well, we built an integrated, scalable, and universal compliance platform with a whole host of financial services. Simply put, using this platform, different financial services participants can transact with each other across a common compliance framework in a multi-jurisdictional setting. And we built supporting financial services, a layer of APIs for easy access. In effect, an entire framework whereby various institutions and investors can come in and participate globally. So what sets us apart? And really it begins with a philosophy, the approach that we have taken to the development of our technology. First, as I've indicated, the most important thing that we look at is a framework that works for the future, that is scalable and accessible, must be open and universal. That means that we said no to walled gardens, whether they be institutional walled gardens or individual ledgers. It's one of the reasons why we spent a lot of time really engaging with the Stellar Development Foundation, because we see the Stellar Ledger as having a tremendous amount of power for financial transactions. What we were able to do with the Stellar Development Foundation is build in some compliance tools, and you can see this in their latest release, to really support the deployment of digital securities on the Stellar Ledger. This means that market participants don't have to be trapped in a single option DLT, which we don't think is the future. And in fact, when we speak with regulators, regulators also agree. If we ask any national regulator, what do you think about the prospect of having trillions of dollars of your nation's economy living on one single distributed ledger? The reaction is always the same. That doesn't make a lot of sense. We need optionality and an open framework. Secondly, of course, real-time settlement through the automation, not just of business logic, which is what we think about with smart contracts, but also the automation of compliance within the same framework. This is very, very important. Of course, interoperability among all of these systems, where reconciliation between different systems, real-time reconciliation, not at end of day, not 2 days later, but real-time reconciliation among these different systems is key. And to that end, we took a very unusual architectural decision. We decided to create off-chain control locations. And this was controversial when we started doing it. Most of the regulators with whom we speak now agree that that is the superior model. That's the model that they're looking for, one that gives them comfort.
All right, that last part, the superior model that gives them comfort, especially when it comes to institutions. Listen to this clip from Denell Dixon, then we'll kick it over to the second to last part in regards to tokenized assets, and in particular, RWA and so on. So let's go ahead and play this. I've gone ahead and turned up the volume because on the one from YouTube, it was really, really hard to hear. So I wish I could amplify just a tad bit more, but this is the most that my amp would allow me to do without it sounding too distorted. This is only 28 seconds. This is Denell Dixon. This was pretty recent. Listen to this.
The network itself open source, but any kinds of tools that are leveraged that certainly are built within our community and our ecosystem, we're also open source. We just recently built an open source tool, and it was open source 2 months ago, that is about bulk uploading of bulk payments, so that you can upload thousands of payments at one time and then you can have that be interplay with a wallet that's Stellar enabled, and then you can actually make payments at scale.
Bulk payments all at one time. You know, if you think about real world assets, I mean, once you need something to be able to do it all at one time at scale, I think you do. Jumping into this next part, take a look at this for a second. This is also pretty good. This is a reference from CoinDesk. Here we go. What's it mentioned here? Well, it goes on to state that the market for tokenized assets could grow to as large as 10 trillion in this decade. I have it way higher than that. A lot of you guys do as well. But this decade, as traditional financial TradeFi institutions continue to do what? Adopt blockchain tech. Digital asset management firm 21.co said in a report. And here's what they said. Quote, the convergence between crypto and traditional asset classes, including fiat currencies, equities, government bonds, and real estate, is experiencing an unprecedented growth. The report, or read the report, quote, we estimate that the market value for tokenized assets will be between 3.5 trillion in the bear case scenario, my God, and 10 trillion in the bull case by 2030. A lot of you guys have the overall market for crypto being way higher than that. But again, this is just in regards to tokenized assets, right? We understand that there's so much more to it than just this. What about more about this, particular report or this forecast? 21CO's forecast that joins a slew of recent reports, predictions about the potential for tokenizing real-world assets. Crypto's buzzword for placing traditional financial products such as private equity, debt, real estate on the blockchain rails. I know some of you guys in the comments talk about XRP, for example. I mean, for me, XRP definitely saw this. But what about when we talk about Stellar? I understand that both are part of the mix, but it's interesting when we get more into it to see the bigger picture. Bank of America, for example, said in a report that tokenization could transform the existing financial infrastructure back to what Danelle literally was just talking about. Increase efficiencies, reduce cost, optimize supply chains. A Boston Consulting Group report earlier this year estimated that the market for tokenized assets could mushroom to 16 trillion. My God. So, in conclusion, my notes in regards to, Stellar being like a BlackRock escrow. I want you guys to recognize this. That's why I shared some of that research from earlier. So the bottom line is this. I'm just turning on some things in regards to the branding. It helps me when I chop up the videos. It's all worth pointing out, and in particular, this whole thing about specifically Stellar having escrow smart contract development, understanding that we have, for example, Sorbonne, which, by the way, is a real thing, and getting into the part where that's going to have a full phase rollout, right? Not just parts of certain ones being put on mainnet, but having a full phase rollout. How will institutions use what we just talked about in regards to smart contract escrow for tokenization? What will it mean for institutions, and particularly BlackRock? And of course, what will it mean for Stellar moving forward? Well, three main things I want to get into in regards to smart contracts or escrow smart contracts for what, guys? Tokenization. Number one, secure custody. Because this is BlackRock we're talking about, the leader when it comes to being an asset custodian. So you got to have secure custody. Stellar's escrow contracts can act as secure vaults for tokenizing assets or tokenized assets. Institutions, in this example, BlackRock, can hold these assets, for example, security tokens, real estate, et cetera, bonds, in escrow until specific conditions are, of course, met, ensuring regulatory compliance and reducing, of course, counterparty risk. Isn't that the point? If we talk about utility, actually, like what utility does Stellar bring to the table? My God, that right there sounds like that's a lot of value that Stellar's bringing to the table, but it doesn't end there. It's fractional ownership. Hear me out on this one as well. Smart contracts, in this example for escrow smart contracts, can automate the process of dividing assets, of course, into tokens. This is exactly what Larry Fink is describing. This allows institutions to offer fractional ownership of traditionally illiquid assets. Don't overthink it at all. Like real estate or even artwork. And we've gotten those examples in regards to artwork way before every other example, right? Because of NFTs and so on. And that's, of course, going to make them more accessible to investors. Utility-based smart contracts, isn't that the whole point? In an NFT form? Right. Deeds in the forms of NFTs? That makes more sense to me. How about programmable releases? Escrow features can, in fact, be programmed, and not just be programmed, but be programmed through Stellar's network and be able to release tokens upon fulfilling specific criteria. Guys, think about it. Don't overthink about it. Imagine, for example, a contract releasing tokens to investors only after a project reaches a specific milestone. Wow. That sounds even better than any concept of an ETF in my book. What about the implications for institutions and Stellar? Of course, we talked about BlackRock. There's many others, right? Well, let's get into that for a second. 4 examples on this one. It's increased efficiency. By having a streamlined tokenization process with escrow-based smart contracts, it can save institutions time, resources, and the main thing, a lot of money. What about in new investment products? As we know, when it comes to tokenization specifically, it will open doors for innovative financial products. We talk about ETFs and the products that they produce. What about this in regards to the escrow thing that a lot of people are not even talking about? I haven't yet to see a single person talk about Stellar and escrow. Glad to talk about it with you guys tonight. Institutions can create and offer security tokens, attracting new investors and boosting, of course, just that, revenue. Enhance transparency. Let's talk about this as well. The distributed ledger nature of Stellar in itself ensures a transparent record of ownership and transactions, fostering trust among investors. Back to the whole thing of what we talked about earlier, like especially when it comes to quant, the internet of trust, but it's the internet of trust and the internet of value. They come hand in hand. Will this create wider adoption for Stellar? Well, you better believe it. But in the realm of real world assets being tokenized, especially the ones from institutions, man, that sounds big. That sounds like a lot of money being put on blockchain. As institutions leverage Stellar for tokenization, it could lead to wider adoption, of course, the Stellar network increasing its value, and more importantly, its liquidity that, of course, all of us in the retail land have been complaining about. Right. There's always challenges to consider. We have to mention this. It's not just raw Stellar. One of the challenges, like it was drawn up in the white paper, I'm talking about the latest white paper that references the U.S. Treasury, and that is regulation. And that regulatory blueprint, if you want to call it, it mentions specifically some things to consider, and that is the regulatory frameworks around tokenized assets and how they're still evolving. It's nice to see in that report that was put out, I believe, late last year. There might have been an update earlier this year in regards to Stellar and their involvement. I love the idea that they have the blueprint, at least introducing it for the United States. But institutions will, in fact, need to navigate these complexities. I think they already have. And I think they realize that Stellar helps them get that job done because Stellar gets it. They always meet that demand, have totally dotted their I's and crossed their T's in regards to compliance. All right. There's technical expertise when it comes to all this. That's why we referenced some of those videos in the outline tonight, whether it's securitized and so on. But developing and deploying smart contracts, as we know, requires technical expertise. Institutions may need to partner with who? Blockchain specialists. And who better than Stellar to get the job done, at least in my opinion. So thought that was very well worth pointing out. Doesn't get mentioned a lot when it comes to the whole thing of BlackRock and so on. Stellar, the escrow solution, I think it is. And we'll continue to follow this a lot more closely in the future. Some of you guys ask what cold storage solution I use. I use this, and it is the Decent wallet. All right. I also, of course, have a ledger like this. All right. You can get a discount basically from going into the affiliate link, which is in all the live video descriptions and recorded and so on. And for the yahoos that are out there, they're like, this is just a shield. And, you know, Will Fix pointed this out, and it's a great point. Were you aware that you don't necessarily get a discount link just going straight to the site? No, you actually have to go through a platform like this. So how cool is that? You know, I don't think anybody's complaining about that. But anyway, use the link, get a discount. There's another one here. If you're the type of person you want to get one for you and your, you know, significant other, you can get two of them. They actually have another promotion, which is this, and I think this is cool. You can get an all-in-one card wallet plus backup card package. Interesting. I thought that was cool. And again, one of the main key things I like about the Decent wallet is not having to do the red tape of, you know, jumping through all the hoops for XDC and the custom folder. I mean, Edward Vincent can vouch on that. Some of you guys can too as well in regards to Ledger. That was a pain in the butt. You don't have that problem. You literally open up your phone, it's on your app, track everything that's going on, right? And, you know, saying goes, not your keys, not your crypto. You know the drill. Check it all out, though, if you wish to do so. It is truly the cold storage solution that I use for the most part. There's still some on Ledger that, you know, I kind of split it up on it and so on. So it is what it is. But if I have preference over one, I'm going with this one. A lot easier to use and so on. And some people, even to this day, still ask me which one to use.